5, 6, 7, 8. Rock step, triple step, rock step, cha-cha-cha. Rock step, cha-cha-cha. Rock step, triple step.
Hi, my name is Kate, and my pronouns are they, them.
And my name is Lou, and my pronouns are also they, them.
Just two they, thems talking about dance.
Dance and stuff.
Dance and stuff. Okay, Lou, welcome. Hello. Today, we have an amazing guest. Her name is Rassamy, and she uses she, her pronouns. Rassamy is a West Coast swing dancer, a DJ and teacher, a woman of color, and cultural educator. She helps communities transform their approach to accessibility and justice through cultural understanding and community building. She works with many West Coast swing organizations, including Seattle Swing Dance Club, Easter Swing, and Boogie by the Bay. So welcome, Rassamy.
Hello, welcome. Thank you for being here today.
Thanks, Lou. I'm so glad to have been invited. I'm so honored. Thank you for having me.
Yes, we're so excited to have you here and have someone that's like knowledgeable of West Coast here, because Kate is a salsa dancer and I'm a Lindy Hopper. So this is one of the first episodes where we get to dive into a new form of dance and learn a little bit ourselves.
Yay, that's exciting.
Yeah, and then you do a lot of DEI work in the West Coast world. We'd love to hear a little bit of how'd you get started in that?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks again. I'm just so honored to be here. I'm just so excited. I've been listening to some previous episodes and just kind of seeing what y'all been doing. So DEI and my work, it kind of was my day-to-day job. I worked in an advisory role for corporate. And around that same time, I was actively competing and organizing events and making sure that I was building an inclusive and diverse community. And through that work, I was able to kind of bridge the two things in my life, and where I was doing it for a living, but also being able to do it for a community and a hobby that I so cherished and valued and loved. And so, in a lot of my work, I joined an initiative called Swing Diversity, and they had kind of launched in 2021, and I was one of the first board members for this DEI initiative for West Coast Swing. And so being on the board, helping them build up their program, and trying to amplify a lot of initiatives and inclusivity practices and movement towards a justice-centered hobby, because that wasn't happening in West Coast Swing, where it is, unfortunately, a very whitewashed and being moved away from its origins of Black social dance. So that was a large part of my role, is kind of initiating and being a part of that DEI initiative through Swing Diversity, and then being able to take that on within my own community and using my experience and expertise here in Seattle with the various organizations, especially Seattle Swing Dance Club, which is the longest running dance club in the world. It's been around since 1965.
Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah, I'm the first woman of color president. I was president for 5 years. And so I kind of took us through COVID. That was a wild time.
It was really, thank you for doing that as a dance organizer. That was a hard time to keep it alive, everything alive. Yeah,
it really was, and I do owe it to a team. It wasn't just me; it was a team of the other board of directors through volunteers that are just putting their passion and time to keep the longest running swing dance club alive, essentially. So a lot of my work between DI and West Coast Swing was just a bridge between just my personal and then to my professional life, and seeing that how to come. Currently, I have decided to take a step back based due to just current world affairs and being able to avoid burnout and establish some boundaries and peace within my own well-being. But the work that I've seen and that has maybe developed from, the past 5 years since I've started bridging the two, DEI and West Coast Swing, there's been positive gains. And of course, as you know, there's always more work to do. So it's going to be continued work. And I think the influence that I have the privilege of to have in our community I've been able to amplify a lot of things that I'm passionate about, but also to provide opportunity for marginalized dancers. And that's always been my passion.
So cool. I love that. And I want to kind of I want to loop back to the burnout piece and like what it means to step away and pass the baton, hopefully, to someone else who's going to take over the work that you're doing if you're stepping back. But I want to go back. Is it common for there to be DEI in specific dance scenes, or is this kind of a West Coast swing specific? Or
is it a youth specific?
Or is it a youth specific thing? I don't have that in my salsa community that I'm aware of. And so I'm just curious if you've seen it other places or how that's felt to be kind of a pioneer.
I love that question. With my kind of, frame and perspective and only experience in West Coast swing, I will say that West Coast swing is maybe one of the only ones I know that among other communities, I'm a little adjacent to Zouk. I have some crossover friends and a lot of community work. But West Coast swing, I see has done, I'm going to put an asterisk here, that I have seen in the work, in the optics of it kind of in a public facing way. With that said, asterisk, because a lot of DI work should be not performative. That's how you make the most progress and change, right? There's a lot of change that should not be public facing. There's so much leadership.
More walk, less talk.
Yeah, exactly. More walk. There's more action than the talk. So so with that said, I do notice that West Coast swing has more of a scene within DEI, I guess, if I were to observe it from my own experience. But again, I am operating from kind of this biased perspective where I only have been entrenched in West Coast swing. I do want to say, though, I want to acknowledge that I know that the blues and the fusion scene has done a lot of work in consent culture, in inclusivity practices that I want to give kudos to, that West Coast swing has borrowed a lot of their community practices and in leadership development that we've received through their experience. So it's kind of been an homage to the blues and the fusion community.
Cool.
But I do notice DEI work within West Coast swing because of my own, perspective and framework and of the experience that I have. So I really can't say with the other communities, but sharing, Kate, you mentioned you didn't really see that in salsa.
Yeah.
And I haven't either. So.
And like Lindy Hop definitely also has a culture of, we've taken also a lot from blues and fusion with consent as well. And we do a lot to try and recognize the roots and history of the dance, but that's a little bit more talk and a little less walk. Like I see a little less of like doing a lot of the groundwork to be able to make sure that everyone's feeling included. I've seen more of it actually in the Balboa community is really working at making sure that people feel a little bit more comfortable walking in the door and being accepted. But it really sounds like you're bringing a lot of like this professional DEI, like Jedi type stuff to the dance world in a little bit more of like a full form way than a lot of other communities are doing.
Right. Yeah. I think I spoke a little bit earlier about, I use this as an opportunity because I have a background and expertise in it where I'm able to do that. Mm-hmm. And I think that's because I'm able to do in West Coast swing because I do West Coast swing and I do, community organizing. So I'm able to connect with other organizers because I've traveled over the world and I know all these people within very niche West Coast swing communities. So it's kind of this networking and having opportunity, providing and offering it because of who I am and my background versus maybe a different community might contracting me in a way that's kind of been happening. I've been contacted by the Portland Blues dance club. And so there's a lot of enmeshing happening, but right now my main experience has been prioritizing and focusing on West Coast swing because I'm so entrenched and involved in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So-
your main community, right?
Exactly. It is my main community. I am trying to cross train in a zouk. I mentioned earlier. I would love to devote more time, but life be life, and so
I know so many zouk dancers that are also passionate about West Coast swing.
They're both such
There's-
smooth dances. So yeah, it
There's
seems
something
like
symbiotic there.
yeah. So what
true.
are some of these DEI wins that you've had? Like what's some of the walking that you've done with your organizations?
Yeah, I will say it's again, a lot of the walking is leadership development. It's a lot of, if you think about the top down effect is much more impactful if it was even though individual work and change is so meaningful and impactful. It is important to have to have internal change and awareness, but it is so much more important when you are able to develop organizers and leaders of a scene, because they have kind of this automated influence in a way. They're the ones putting on an event. So an event can bring hundreds or thousands of dancers, but when you can reach a leader, an organizer, and help develop their skills in creating an inclusive dance opportunity, an event, a social, that's how you're reaching a lot of it. So for example, in my work with Seattle Swing Dance Club, being on the board, a lot of this logistical consultation comes from, why are we doing it this way, and how can we change it, or what kind of initiatives or new projects or programs do we want to do, and then me bringing my DI lens to it. A big thing with hobby communities is financial barriers and access to dance and as an opportunity. So we implemented some discounts for marginalized communities and making sure that that's accessible to them, making sure that we're reaching students that don't have disposable income, for example. So a lot of this comes from the framework of how to, again, walking the walk. It's all behind the scenes. It's like, how are we building these initiatives and programs versus maybe publicly acknowledging some diverse practices or inclusivity. So Seattle Swing Dance Club has been a huge part of my work and being a key consultant, being on the board, and my work with Easter Swing. Easter Swing is essentially, they're one and the same. I will say Easter Swing is an event of Seattle Swing Dance Club. So that's and that Easter Swing has been run for 30 plus years. And the same thing, Easter Swing is a weekend convention. So again, when you talk about developing leadership, how are you developing the executive decisions that you're making to provide this weekend of teaching, of socializing, of dance opportunity to thousands of dancers from all across the world. People from all across the world come to Bellevue every year to participate in Easter Swing. So a big win I will acknowledge is the leadership is going to be huge because of that top down and trickle down within their development and within their leadership to then influence that across the community that they are creating opportunities for.
Amazing. And I feel like that also, well, I want to ask about you stepping back a little bit, because that building of leadership is also what allows people like you to pass the baton and to have other people that are prepared to take this kind of work on. Do you feel like I'm sure that's challenging in a way to do that, but is it feeling like there's other folks that can step in and do what you've been doing?
I do feel that, yes, thankfully, because of, I mentioned earlier, but the networking and building kind of a community of practice is so important. Having folks know that they're your people in a way, and that you can trust them. And so based on my experience and kind of my role across the community, I feel like I built that network, and then trusting those people to take that, like you mentioned, taking the baton. For example, we have a new president for the Seattle Swing Dance Club that I consult a lot with. It's my last year as a board member. So it's kind of, again, this is not the perfect time to, I feel safe and confident in their abilities to take on the role of president. They've done a great job so far, and they're seeking feedback. They're seeking historical, institutional knowledge. I mean, all that stuff is so important. As we know, history, is important to acknowledge and learn from, and West Coast Swing is no different, for sure.
No, that's so cool to hear that there is a sense of sharing the leadership, because I do think that is so much what's needed in the dance world, is sharing of resources, feedback loops that actually create change. That's huge.
Yeah, I also, I want to go back to your question or piece about my own personal decision to step back, and for me, it would definitely amplified with the change of administration, and a lot of blowout from initiatives that, if I named DEI, I felt it was targeted. I felt like I was targeted, especially as a person of color, as a woman of color, and so based on that decision, it was a way of a personal protection, honestly. Even though there's a lot of things that I am continuing doing, it's just a little less public and visible, I guess, because of just things that, I just don't feel safe as a practitioner of color doing the work, because I've gotten public backlash. I've received I get trolled on, all this stuff. I've seen it all, and there's just a moment where it's like I just can't do it anymore. It's just not it's not worth my own personal well-being, because if I can't show up in the space then that impacts the work. So there's kind of give and take there. So I had to take a step back from the public work to then focus on kind of that behind the scenes, walking the walk, I think.
Yeah. And that's just heartbreaking too, that you receive so much backlash with just the way that our world is functioning right now, because you're doing so much good work to actually make this more accessible for everybody. Mm-hmm. And I also really love that what I'm hearing about how you've done so much to set up any leadership to be successful and to be able to have a very inclusive community. So then you can have someone else do that emotional labor, because really, like, it's white people. Like, it wouldn't be great if the white men were like putting that wouldn't it be great if they were the one fighting the trolls and stuff like that. So I love that you have made space for yourself to be able to take that. And like, a question on the burnout, because it's so common for dance leaders to get burnt out, dance leaders of all kind to get burnt out. How does it intersect with your dancing? Have you still been in the ballrooms even though you're getting burnt out on the DEI?
Yes. See, that's the great question. It's for me, I feel like I have to, I don't want to say have to. How do I say this? I feel like I have to prioritize dancing, because that's always been my first and foremost love and reason why social dancing. It's social dancing.
It's like why you're there.
It's why I started. It's how I got here. Right. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I have to think about, how can I show up my best self is doing things that I love and that are good for me. And that's going out social dancing in a community that is why I'm here in the first place. So I do, I go out 2 to 3 nights a week now. That's kind of, I still actively do that. I did take a break for a while for other personal decisions, but for me, it's like I always have to revert back to, like, why am I here? Like, why did I do this in the first place? It's the love for social dancing. Mm-hmm. It's the love for the dance that that I want to show others on the greatness of what it is. So thankfully, yes, I am prioritizing dance, because of the benefits and of how that helps me show up in the space for DEI, if that were to kind of go hand in hand in a way.
Wow, I'm having so many thoughts at once about what you're sharing. So let me just say this. Thank you so much for naming it. That it wasn't just, oh, I'm trying to avoid burnout or what. It was that you actually had to take some space due to what is happening in our political climate and the world at large. I really appreciate you feeling like you could say that. And at the same time, I was having, before you and Lou started talking about this, I was having this thought in my head, like, how many powerful femmes and female leaders are Lou and I going to interview on this podcast before we find a man that we want to interview that's doing the same work?
Yeah, there's not a lot. Yeah.
I mean, I'm getting chills of both being moved and rage thinking about how much labor has been done by women of color and femmes of color and queer people too, of course. But thank you for what you've done, and thank you for stepping back, because you deserve to feel safe.
Yeah, you deserve to also reap the rewards of like all of this work that you've put into the community. Like, yeah, that's why like rotating facilitatorship can be so beautiful, is because you can create that space and then pass the baton. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for acknowledging that, and as you, and that's another thing. I think, we don't do the hard work for accolades or acknowledgments, but it is so appreciated to get some flowers every night. So it means so much. It really does. And I have I love that you brought up femmes and queer folks, queer organizers doing a lot of the work. So, for example, when I left Meta, a lot of my organizers on Meta, right? And so once that kind of it unfortunately it fell apart. And the folks that stepped up when I kind of got some updates from West Coast Swing, friends and people that are still involved in it and of course the folks that stepped up were all women, femmes. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's such a telling story, and it's so interesting. You all have yet to find a male, or someone that is doing that work and with that identity. It's very interesting.
We have a couple, but they're much lower on our list than we got like a list full of femmes, and then there's like two guys on it, two dudes. Yeah.
Wow.
And our listenership is almost primarily queer people and women. So hopefully this will fall on male ears at some point.
Yeah, because they benefit from all of this work that we're doing too. Yeah, and like everyone benefits from having a more inclusive dance floor. Do you only want to dance with tech workers, or do you want to have like a full range of people to dance with?
I'm laughing because my answer feels so obvious. I'm like, oh, the salsa world is just like, I mean, it's Seattle, right?
Yeah. You mentioned Meta, and we found you originally on social media. You were doing some really great content creation under the username the DEI Dancer, which I think was really good. And I was a fan of you, especially watching your TikToks where you're like fighting the trolls and all that stuff. It was really fun. And then you left Meta, and it was around the same time that Kate and I have been working to divest from Meta ourselves, and from just like taking a step back from social media content creation to focus in other places. And we didn't fully walk away, so we really respect that you have straight up just deleted all of your accounts and stuff like that. I'd love to hear more in your decision of why you did that, and what it's been like to be off social media.
My main thing, it was kind of a two-part. I mentioned a little about some trolls and kind of some backlash. That was a part of it, but I have thick skin. Like, I've heard it all. Like, this is like day-to-day stuff. I have folks that go to my workshops because they're required to, all that stuff. Like, it's all, I deal with it day in, day out. And then, and then dealing with people, of course, I'm never going to change their mind, but whatever. But it just, it wasn't even the trolls. It was actually some strife among actual fellow organizers, and you know, some you know, disjointed community practices and you know, things like that took its toll on me, because you feel like I mentioned earlier, you find your people, you find a network that you can trust, but then you also find those that are opposite of that are trying to you know, upend it in a bit, or kind of do to protest against that, you know. So that was one thing, and it was really disheartening to see it from people that I thought I could trust, and that I thought that I would do the right thing. But you know, I kind of had this optimistic expectation, but as we know, disappointment is just unmet expectation. So that was one piece of that. It's kind of some among my community of organizers, and there was some just disjointedness there. And then the other piece, of course, is the misalignment of values of you know, the folks that own the Meta platform, and bending the knee to the current president. And so a lot of things just built upon it, and for me it was just like, I was like this, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to support Zuckerberg and all his like oligarch friends and all that stuff, and so I was like, I'm just gonna do it. So I waited until I traveled to my first overseas event, because as you know, the only way to find roommates, the only way to find friends, to like dance friends, is on social media. There's Facebook groups that I'm gonna land at this time. Anyone want to do a ride share? I can't do that I couldn't do that without Facebook. So I waited until I went to France for my best friend's wedding, and then there was a West Coast Swing event in Lyon the week after. So it was my first overseas event. Facebook, I knew, I was like, I need it for this. It's the necessary evil for me to, to get lost, or to have at least people I can know that I'm there and that I'm not, So I needed that. And then when I landed back home in September, like Labor Day weekend, and Facebook makes it so hard to leave. Oh my God, of course.
Yeah, it's so hard to delete your account. I have deleted my Facebook account, and I was following a tutorial to be able to do it.
Literally, I had to go to this tutorial, this checklist. Mm-hmm. Anyways, the one thing I do miss is all my dance videos that I've had for 15 years, dance photos. We have often professional photos at the events that some photographers offer for free. So you just have this you kind of had to let that go, and that was the one thing I missed, besides the community, of course. But I was like, there's these memories that I have. So yeah, I deleted it. I went cold turkey. People say, deactivate. They have the little note before they ask you to delete. Are you sure? You sure you want to take a break instead? No,
I'm done. Yeah.
I know, I'm done. And so, I considered deactivating and keeping Messenger, for example, kind of like slowly taking it back. And there's some steps that I was like, no, I deleted it. I deleted it in September of this past fall. And I have not, I'm not gonna lie. I definitely almost wanted to go back, because I was like, I need a roommate. I'm going to this event. I don't know who's there, And thankfully, I built deep connections outside of that, where I have, some, I phone numbers, emails. Thankfully, I've been able to travel and attend events with that in mind. But damn, it's so hard. It's really hard.
That's how they get you.
As an organizer, that's how they get you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the really insidious thing that a lot of these tech industries have done, is that they insert themselves in your life. They've taken away something that we have done just naturally with each other, of just being social and having connections. And then they're like, here, you do it now through our company. And now they own your ability to have social connections with people.
And they're literally
dangerous.
Wild.
They're leveraging your memories.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I know. There is a way to save all your stuff. But it's like rocket science. You have to be have have a PhD in meta to like
purposely making it hard to find and hard to do because they want to keep you there. But I think you're also naming something really big that like that social dancing like social media is a huge part of how it functions. It's like how people know about dances, and a lot of dance organizations, I go to find out information about them and they're only on Facebook. They don't even have a website I can go to that tells me what their information is. And with, as you're passing the baton and how when you've gone through this and the organizations that you've had, like, are your organizations still on social media? Are you still having people post over there? Like, how's that going?
Oh yeah, 100%. You know, for the Seattle Swing Dance Club, we have like a marketing committee, you know, where they're on Instagram and Facebook, where I was the one doing that, ironically. I was the one, you know, doing all that. And passing that off, they're doing the work because it's informational. That's the only way to get information out, is to post on social media. Like you said, Lou, you mentioned if I, for example, I'm traveling to San Antonio for work, you know, in a few months, and I wanted to see what some local dances were. So I search Google, even though Google's another problematic thing. That's another story. Is, you know, you search West Coast Swing location, whatever, and the first thing that pops up is usually always Instagram,
100%.
Facebook, you know, and you're right, they don't have a website, but then you think about it, it's because that's another barrier sometimes for everyday dancers. They're not going to set up a whole website, you know, for their one.
Not everybody knows how to web design, and once you have a website, you're paying for it. So
yes, there's and again, going back to what do they have? What's the resource? It's Facebook. It's free, but they leverage and weaponize, you know, that this information, that the chokehold that they have on us against us, right?
Yeah. So it's so insidious and it's so slippery and tangled up as we try to do the right thing for both ourselves and our community. It's really, it's a lot.
It's really hard.
So are you also, so you're gone from Meta. Are you also off everything?
I'm off of Meta, you know, so Meta was Threads, Instagram, Facebook. So that's for sure deleted. I am our local, Seattle West Coast Swing Committee. They have a Discord, and it's not as active as Facebook. Yeah. It's wild. I'm trying to like amp things up and hype things up. It's just not the same because the default right now, the easy default is Facebook Messenger, group chats, organizing things via Meta. So it's really hard. It's really hard to, again, find my community too, and it's also it's opened my eyes to how much is done, how much of it has been on there, has been reliant, offers opportunities. It's all in this one platform, and Discord, you know, not without its own problems again. It's not the same. It's very different. It's very, very different. And so I played it, kind of done a little mini experiment where, you know, organizing on there, just offering the kind of the same opportunities that I would when I was on Meta. And there's just no engagement. There's just, there's little to no engagement.
Because people people don't want to split their attention between too many platforms, and they're already, so unless you've really built a community on the Discord channel that gets people to show up to it, it's going to be a ghost town.
It literally is a ghost town for the local West Coast Swing. Yeah, I've seen some positive examples. For the San Francisco West Coast Swing, their Discord's really active and they do a good job. I'm trying to learn from them, like what are some tips and engagement tricks. So that's kind of a positive. Yeah. It can happen. It just hasn't happened for Seattle West Coast Swing.
Well, as a graphic designer, I just really hope that this is the return of print media. I want more cool posters. Maybe that's how we fight this. Send each other postcards, get on the telephone, something like that. So a topic that I really wanted to talk to you about today was the fact that I am a Lindy Hopper. I have been, indoctrinated into the cult of Lindy Hop, even though I'm not really a fan of being in a cult. But one of those things that we've had, and we, talked about this in our white supremacy episodes of this us versus them thinking. And I was definitely indoctrinated into this us versus them of Lindy Hop versus West Coast. And there's this interesting dynamic that Lindy Hop has of like, well, Lindy Hop is the authentic Black American dance and West Coast is the white appropriation of it. And because of that, we got to feel like special, that we were like better than West Coast or something like that. But then I would, dancing in a ballroom where there's also a West Coast social, I'd peek my nose in there and I'd be like, why are there so many people of color in the white appropriation of this? So I don't really understand it. And I'm ready to dissect this, deconstruct this a little bit, understand it more. So I really want to understand you. What's your perspective on this whole us versus them between Lindy Hop and West Coast swing?
Oh, I'm so glad this is one of the topics. When you brought it up, I was like, oh, that's such a good one, because since I've been on West Coast swing, like I will say, I'm gonna backtrack. There is some disconnect and maybe some room for growth and improvement for organized, like West Coast swing teachers and organizers to acknowledge the West Coast swing roots in Lindy Hop. Like first and foremost, that's another issue. But for those folks that have that that are understand and acknowledge that, like they are a core group of people that that have had no problem. When I say problem, have had no, this mentality or rivalry. It seems like the West Coast swing to Lindy Hop, right? But like you mentioned, Lou, yeah, I think it's I've felt and have personally received that from Lindy Hoppers. Again, in that crossover, and there's a lot of crossover between Lindy Hoppers and West Coast swing dancers. Westies, as maybe as some people might
Westies,
also know, Westies, Lindy Hoppers. And so in my experience on all the years that I've done West Coast swing, it's that. It's like it's the bastardized version of vintage swing. It's the the appropriated, or it's the cheaper looking swing dance, and they're like, it's not even swing, and so it's always, I've always heard it that way. And funnily enough, going back to meta, I always feel like I'm going back to meta. there's this meme group about from Lindy Hoppers, and when West Coast swing dancers would go in there, we would get ripped.
That meme group is super problematic, by the way.
That's
what I haven't thought about that since the day I deleted that my Facebook account. Like, oh my God, that meme group is so bonkers.
That meme group is so volatile and toxic. I was like, oh my gosh, this is why it's like this. And so because the common sentiment I hear is that, yeah, it's like, oh, West Coast swing, that's not even swing. We're the original swing. You wouldn't have West Coast swing if it wasn't, And another example is, and Lou, I'd be curious on what your experience, because I think you mentioned this in one of our notes, our initial scheduling notes, is that the difference of the demographic and maybe the visual, like the community. So one thing I've heard from Lindy Hoppers is that they people don't even acknowledge, Lindy Hop is the roots of West Coast swing, but these are coming from white Lindy Hop, and I'm like, I'm scratching my head. I'm like, where is this coming from? It's like, and so it's very interesting. It's kind of like, what's that analogy? Maybe help me. It's like
pot calling the kettle black.
Yeah, a little,
yeah, it's very
a little that. I'm like, are you sure you want to say
all
that
white
out
people
loud?
making the black people uncomfortable in the Lindy Hop community, looking at West Coast and being like, well,
yes,
but
yes,
yeah.
Not without to say, there's always room to improve and increase opportunities for dancers of color in West Coast swing. but again, based on your anecdote, Lou, is that I have noticed some more of a demographic and more diverse community across, that, not without to say, again, if you look at the champions setup in West Coast Swing, all white, right? Mostly all white. And
you mean the people that are like winning competitions and can you say more about that? So I don't understand.
Yeah. Absolutely. So Kate, so when I reference like champions, so those are like the top of the top.
Well, that's even, they're called champion. Like, that's wild.
Okay. I'm glad you brought that up. That's not common in other styles I'm hearing. Okay. Very interesting. So yes. So if you think about the competition levels, again, designated by a whole organization, that's another thing, but it's champions is like kind of the top level. If you go through like from newcomer, novice, intermediate, advanced, all-star champions, or like
right, there's like actual levels
literal
that are kind of sanctioned.
Oh yeah, because it's a point system, right?
Correct.
That's
correct.
It's such a completely different world. It's weird how every dance form is very different.
It is very different. So that's when I went to champions. And so when you think about champions, so they're often those that are instructors. They're often those that are hired at events because of their kind of cred. But again, when you look across the lineup, often they're all white, usually conventionally attractive, thin, all these like very typical, privileged identities and privileges and experiences. So anyway, right. so with that, it's very interesting to hear Lindy Hopper's, kind of dogging West Coast Swing in a way. But again, like pot calling the kettle black, and it's like, but Lindy Hop is original Black social street dance. But then if I were to Google Lindy Hop now, or like the Wikipedia page, for example, or even of the first YouTube video that pops up, it's not representative of what maybe the history would say, right?
Absolutely.
So again, that ties in with West Coast Swing too. It's really very reflective of each other because they are kind of very similar. But there is this, I've noticed for sure, this talking down to West Coast Swing.
And then do Westies feel that way? Like towards, are they like, Lindy Hoppers, like those guys are the worst, dancing something from the 30s? Like, is the sentiment returned, or is it just a reaction to like, whoa, why do these people feel weird towards us?
I think if it was a reaction, it's because of their sentiment or behavior towards our community. And so then of course it's going to build some animosity when you're like, you just don't like us for no reason. No, I'm not going to like you for no reason. So it can be a little retaliatory. And I've seen that outside of that meme group, but also, within maybe other community spaces, or among organizer to organizer, trying to build and bridge that gap. It just hasn't happened yet because there is, I will say the one thing about West Coast Swing is that they do maybe aren't as interested in Lindy Hop versus maybe vice versa because of the difference in dance style and music. I think it'd be asking a lot of West Coast Swing dancers to do that different, such a stark difference, I think.
They are like very different dances. Like I was having, as an outsider, because I dance salsa and bachata, I was having this thought of like, is it kind of like sensual dancers wanting and feeling the need to learn traditional bachata as like a foundation to the sensual development? And it kind of seems like that isn't the vibe. That it's that like the more vintage dance should be learned before this more modern one. And another thought I'm having is how much, this is just a question as an outsider, how much of that judgment is coming from the music not being traditional music, you know, from a Lindy Hop perspective, because West Coast swing, from my understanding, you can dance to any kind of music. So I don't know, just
Right.
like maybe I'm just like throwing gasoline onto your fire, but I'm just so curious what your thoughts are.
Yes, that there is a whole kind of buzz among West Coast swing about dancing to like traditional blues or jazz, where original West Coast swing was only danced to all those kind of traditional swing music. But with West Coast swing, if the listeners or you all are aware, is that over the years, as we know, music has modernizes over time. West Coast swing has adapted. Then that's why it's my favorite dance because of the adaptability to music and versatility. And historically, it's been because it's adapted to the modernization of music over generations.
That's really cool.
Yeah. What's actually the history of West Coast? Like, I don't actually know where it like splits off from Lindy Hop and becomes its own dance form.
Yeah, I think there's always been some, how do you say, disagreement among, we call them like historians and like, because no one really knows. There's really no hard agreement when it ended or when it started. It's just, it's always evolved. I'm like, how do we not know? And I think, of course, you know, with the technology and how like maybe folks have blogged the first time or, you know, wherever that exists, there's still no agreed split off from when it went to Lindy Hop to West Coast swing. But there is documented, you know, stories of where, you know, originally from Lindy Hop to where it's, you know, they mention Dean Collins often for like modernizing Lindy Hop for like movie screens. And that's why we have a slot now. It's like, oh my gosh, that's wild. So there's really no, I really can't say because I don't think anybody really knows when that happened specifically.
So were they dancing West Coast to like disco music?
Yes. Oh yeah.
Oh wow. Okay.
100%. Yes. Yeah. So like even so if you look at for me, my knowledge goes back to like as far as like as YouTube videos can go, and you know we have like some people are really invested in like archiving old West Coast swing videos, and if you look at West Coast swing from the 90s, it looks so different to what you see at a competition that happened this weekend.
Wow.
It's like it looks like a different dance and different music. It's really fascinating. So that's why there's been kind of a controversial move to rename it modern swing. Even though that really doesn't work because modern is going to change.
Yeah.
Every time, right? So anyways, so it's very interesting. Yeah.
I feel like it kind of flips for me this idea of like constantly like looking forward and like to the now versus I could be wrong, but Lou, is your experience that Lindy Hop is constantly looking back?
Oh, yeah. It's all about always looking back and preserving this thing and watching the videos of the original dancers and trying to be inspired specifically from them. Like there's the movie Spirit Moves, which was an archival thing that was created to document Black American dance and has people like Al Minns in it and stuff like that. And people are always trying to be inspired specifically from that. And I think that that's something really interesting that I've discovered about specifically Black culture is that it functions on a continuum. Like there's the jazz continuum. It's always meant to evolve. It's not meant like it's kind of an aspect of whiteness to want to find like the perfectionism and like putting things in a museum and under glass and trying to make it this really specific thing instead of having it be something that's always growing and being something new. So I'm really hearing that in this conversation. Yeah. Well, Rassamy, we really loved having you here today. You're so wonderful to be able to connect with a Westie that can school us a little bit in both West Coast and DEI. It was just really wonderful to get your perspective. And we're going to go ahead and head off today. So you can leave us a review on your favorite podcasting platform.
Yes, and as always, any kind of love letters, suggestions, any feedback that you have for us can go to degenderdance@gmail.com.
And that's it for us today. Goodbye.
Bye. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you, Rassamy.
Thank you so much.
All right,
Rock,
bye.
step,
All right,
triple
bye-bye.
step. Ooh, ah, jazz hands.